Desta feita vamos ter um webinar particularmente interessante porque vamos falar de e-commerce. O e-commerce que hoje em dia é claramente uma realidade incontornável para todas as empresas, em particular, mais uma vez, neste contexto em que estamos a viver. Hoje temos umas convidadas muito especiais, porque são duas representantes de um marketplace muito relevante, um dos mais importantes do mundo, que é a Etsy. Vamos ter connosco a Michelle White e a Isabella Diaz, enfim, que representam o marketplace Etsy, que estão em dois pontos diferentes do mundo, uma nos Estados Unidos e outra em Inglaterra, portanto em Londres. E o nosso objetivo é, de facto, que esta sessão sirva para que todos tenham uma ideia muito clara sobre como é que funciona este marketplace, quais são as condições, quais são aquilo que devem ter e não devem ter em consideração e, sobretudo, ajudar-vos a que, com todas as ferramentas que existem ao dispor das empresas, possam capitalizar a vossa presença num marketplace tão relevante como o Etsy. Além disso, vamos ter uma intervenção do nosso delegado nos Estados Unidos, João Mota Pinto, que vai-vos dar uma panorâmica geral sobre o contexto do mercado americano nesta circunstância, nesta Covid, e, sobretudo, um mercado tão importante como os Estados Unidos, em que estão a acontecer tantas coisas neste momento, é fundamental que todos estejamos a par daquilo que são as novidades. Estas sessões são, obviamente, sessões que são interativas. A ideia é que vocês, todos os que estão a assistir, possam intervir, possam colocar as vossas questões. Há um chat público que podem usar a qualquer momento. Portanto, não hesitem em colocar as questões, todas, se possível, através do chat. Nós, no final, vamos colocar aos nossos convidados as questões, mas durante a sessão vão poder colocar as questões que entenderem. Nós depois selecionaremos as questões e no final tentaremos responder a todas. Mais uma questão, que é uma questão mais técnica que outra coisa, todos os vossos microfones e todas as câmaras vão ser desligadas durante a sessão para permitir que a sessão funcione de maneira mais eficiente. Queria-vos também deixar aqui uma mensagem que é importante. A AICEP está muito empenhada em levar às empresas portuguesas aquilo que são, por um lado, as grandes tendências do comércio online internacional e, por outro lado, também está muito empenhada em trazer a Portugal e a trazer ao contacto das empresas portuguesas todos os marketplaces importantes no mundo, quer sejam marketplaces gerais, quer sejam marketplaces regionais, quer sejam marketplaces setoriais. E, portanto, queria-vos dizer que nós vamos continuar a trazer a Portugal estes marketplaces. Queria, para finalizar, dar-vos conta que vamos ter nas próximas semanas espero que sejam de interesse e que, só para também a vossa informação, vamos ter proximamente, já na próxima semana, um dedicado aos vinhos na Alemanha. Contamos ter, na semana seguinte, um dedicado a um marketplace também na área dos vinhos, mas um marketplace chinês. E no dia 15 contamos ter, aliás, com o João Mota Pinto também, uma sessão sobre o mercado dos Estados Unidos, dedicada à área dos bens alimentares. Sem mais, eu passaria então a palavra ao João para que nos apresente as circunstâncias do mercado americano neste contexto de Covid-19. Muito obrigado. Até já.
Senhora, obrigado, Eduardo. Muito boa tarde a todos. Como o Eduardo explicou, o meu nome é João Mota Pinto, sou delegado da AICEP em Nova Iorque. Hoje temos a felicidade de ter duas especialistas do marketplace Etsy, portanto, como o Eduardo já referiu, um dos maiores marketplaces a nível mundial, onde as vossas empresas poderão colocar os produtos. A boa notícia deste marketplace é que, uma vez que é global, os seus empresários podem não só colocar os vossos produtos nos Estados Unidos, como na Europa, o que é muito importante para as vossas empresas. Eu irei fazer esta apresentação em inglês. Aliás, esta apresentação é a terceira de uma série de 3 webinars que fizemos sobre e-commerce e esta é especificamente dedicada aos marketplaces. E eu agora então vou passar a fazer a apresentação em inglês. Okay, so let's start. So my focus today will be to talk about a little bit of the impact of COVID-19 in the US market. So I'll talk a little bit what we know about COVID, what we don't know, and then I'll give you a brief introduction about the e-commerce sector before Etsy make their own presentation. So basically, what we know about COVID. We know that as as far as today, as of today, we have had over 2.4 million people infected in the United States, and that unfortunately over 123,000 people have died. And these are recent numbers. And as you know, this is happening in Europe and in the US. The numbers keep on rising. We also know that according to the International Monetary Fund and other sources, that the global economy will shrink by some 3% this year, and that the US GDP will decrease decreased by 4.8% in the first quarter of 2020. So the COVID is affecting the economy, the global and the US economy. It is also estimated that the loss of global GDP could amount to some $9 trillion globally, which is an astounding number. Just for you to have an idea, since March 14, so since the shutdown took place in the US, more than 44 million people applied for unemployment benefits in the United States. However, with the reopen of the economy, many of these people came back, but the unemployment rate is still quite high in the US. So in May, the unemployment was still 13.3%, and it's estimated that at this point there are around 20 million people without a job. Together with this, you also know that the worldwide trade will decrease between 13 and 32% this year, which will affect every single company and every single country in the world. And as you can see in this graph, basically, if you look at the blue line, during the 2008 crisis, the global trade decreased by around 12%, but it is estimated that this time around, it will be a little bit worse. So you have the red line, which is the pessimistic scenario, that you can see a drop as much as 32%. And what this means is that the recovery is going to be slower. So during the first quarter, the first 3 months of this year, the US worldwide imports already decreased 4.3% compared to last year. And we have to take in consideration that during the first quarter, the US economy was still open. So the major impact, of course, came from China, from the Asian countries that were already closed. But this impact will be more noticeable in the next few months. We also know that most governments will be heavily indebted from the expensive emergency relief measures. As you know, governments have been injecting money into the economy, so there will be challenges ahead. And we also know that unfortunately, many viable businesses are facing bankruptcies. This is happening a little bit all over the world. Here in the US, we have seen many department stores filing from bankruptcy to protect themselves. We have seen many smaller retailers that unfortunately won't be able to reopen because they were closed for a long time. So this is what we know. What don't we know? Basically, we don't know the path that the virus will take. Many people thought that over the summer that the virus would fade down and it will disappear. Unfortunately, it seems that will not be the case. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen. We also still don't know the effectiveness of the policies meant to contain the outbreak and to minimize the economic damage. So basically, although the governments are injecting a lot of money into the economy, we don't know what effect these measures have, and if they will be enough to save the economies and many companies. We also don't know if people are going to stay at home, if they will continue self-isolation, which means more depressed spending over time, and this because of the potential resurgence of the virus. So many scientists have said that probably during this fall, the virus is coming back, perhaps even stronger. So many people, they still don't know what they are going to do, which of course will keep affecting the economy. And many countries, as you know, they are having an increased protectionism policies. So many countries are trying to bring companies closer to home. They want to consume more products that are manufactured at home, especially in what concerns food items and health items, the essential products. And this will have, of course, a big impact in the strategic supply chains all over the world. And some countries or some industries might start relying less on imports. So to talk a little bit about e-commerce, because in my opinion, e-commerce might be seen as the only winner, if you can call it that way, of this pandemic. And the first question is, are we going to go back to normal anytime soon? And the answer is no. There has been several studies, and according to some of these studies, in the next 6 to 9 months, only 39% of worldwide consumers expect a high level of interaction with physical stores, and only 24% expect to go back to their previous level of interaction. This means that until a vaccine is available or a treatment is available, many people won't be willing to get out and to do business as usual. Also, over the next 6 months, 24% of Americans said they are uncomfortable about visiting a shopping mall. 25% said they were uncomfortable about going to the movies, and 33% said they were not very comfortable about traveling, both overseas and domestically. And this will have repercussions on the economy. And one last point is that before COVID-19, 30% of worldwide consumers said they have high interaction with online channels, and this number has grown tremendously to 37%. And so this shows you well the importance of e-commerce. So what are the advantages of e-commerce? Basically, as you know, because you are doing everything online, you have lower costs of physical infrastructures. So you don't need to have a store. You can do basically everything online. You have lower employee costs. You can create a lot of international opportunities, and the marketplace and Etsy, it's a perfect example of that. It reduces your costs of scaling your business. It permits high volume orders, because here you are talking about e-commerce not only to B to consumer, business consumer, but also business to business. So it can also permit high volume orders. And there's an opportunity to create a distinctive online brand for your products. But there are also disadvantages. And those are, it's an impersonal method, so there's no personal interaction, there's no personal touch, there's a diminished customer experience. So in other words, your customers cannot, they cannot have that buyer experience that they have when they go to a store and they touch the product. And here the first point is that it's very important when you go to e-commerce, to have a very strong virtual reality and augmented reality investment in your products so that you can showcase them very well. Another disadvantage is the delays. So there's no instantaneous customer fulfillment of the goods. So when you buy a product, usually you have to wait 3, 4, 5 days to get them. It's not instantaneous. There's a lot of competition, because basically any company, there's no real barriers to entry. Any company around the world can place their products on the market. And of course, related to this, there's also a little bit of cybercrime. With the cybercrime, because everything is done online, we have read the news. There's have been cyber theft, identity fraud, but these are issues that are being dealt around the world. So what is the global market outlook for e-commerce? Basically, according to eMarketer, by 2021, the e-commerce sales should reach around $5 trillion. This is a huge number, $5 trillion. And the growth rate of e-commerce as a share of the total retail sales have increased quite substantially and they are expecting it to reach 25% by 2025. This means that if your company is not doing e-commerce, is putting aside 25% of the market. Imagine that. So if you don't do e-commerce, you are not selling to 25% of potential customers. So where did online shoppers visit in March 2020? These are some of the main marketplaces worldwide. These are the marketplaces. We are excluding China here. But as you can see, Etsy, and we have the privilege of having Etsy here today, is one of the main marketplaces in the world. And again, I'll tell you this again, this is very important. Etsy is very important because not only you will be able to sell products in the United States with Etsy, but you will also be able to sell your products in Europe and other countries outside Europe where Etsy works. So for the US market outlook, basically by 2023, the e-commerce is expected to reach $1 trillion with the double digits growth rate year after year, which is extremely important. And it's also important to refer that this growth in e-commerce in the United States, it's not a phenomenon that is happening because of COVID. So there was already a strong growth before COVID-19. Okay, so for you to have an idea, in 2019, the US e-commerce already represented 16% of the total US retail sales. But this number, so the trend towards e-commerce was already there. However, with the pandemic, what happened is that the e-commerce increased over 100% during this pandemic in the US, the growth rate. So as of April 21st, the US and Canadian e-commerce grew 129% year after year compared with the year before. And I have here some statistics that show this very clearly. For example, during the week of April 26th to May 2nd, the North American sales grew 83% compared to the last year, while in Europe, that growth was only 8.9%. So as you can see, the American consumer, because they were not able to get out, they all turned into online platforms and they kept shopping online. So what are the trends? So basically the e-commerce trends is that at this point, consumers are still demanding inexpensive and quick shipping. So consumers are looking for essential goods, basically at this point, because there's a lot of uncertainty about the economic outlook. However, with the reopen of the economy, which in the United States started happening a couple of weeks ago, we are now in many states in phase 2, turning to phase 3, it's expected that consumers will start buying more products that are not considered essential. So as the crisis started, most of the products people were buying online were disposable gloves, food-related products, pain relievers, food and health items, and they were not buying luggage because they could not travel, formal wear because they were not going to the office. But this will tend to change now that the economy reopened. Another trend is that 83% of consumers are open to share their personal information if it creates personal experiences, and if businesses are transparent about how the data is being used. So this is very important because of data privacy, but consumers, they have said, hey, if we know how our information is being used, and if companies are transparent, we don't mind giving more information to companies so that they can create personal experiences for us. This is very important. And the last trend is that 43% of US consumers, they expect free shipping on their orders, and they expect to receive their package within 3 days. Of course, sometimes, and depending on the product, consumer is willing to wait more time, 1-2 weeks, but as a rule, they expect to receive their package very quickly, and this might have some impact on your business. And so you probably should expect, but Etsy will explain you this better. You probably will see first a big demand on your consumers from Europe and a little bit less to the US, unless you have already your goods somewhere in a warehouse in the United States where the consumer can get them when they purchase them. They can get them quicker. And the other trend or another fact is that the average US household receives 121 parcels a year, packages a year, one every 3 days. So you can see that the importance that e-commerce has in this country. To finalize, a quote for Mr. McKinsey from Nielsen that basically says that not innovating, not changing your product flow and adjusting what your portfolio looks like, it's a fundamental mistake. So if your company is not on the market yet, it should be. Otherwise, you are putting in risk your business. I will now turn over this presentation to Michelle to talk about details on how to do business in Etsy. And of course, we are available to answer any questions. Thank you. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you today. We're really looking forward to talk to you a little bit more about Etsy. My name is Michelle, and I'm part of Etsy's International Seller Growth Team. So really, I spend my time thinking about how we can grow our seller base outside of the US market, how we can help those sellers grow their business on Etsy, and how we can really foster a strong community for Etsy sellers outside of the US. I'm joined today by Isabella, who's one of our amazing shop optimization experts. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of getting started on Etsy, and then Isabella is going to tell you a little bit more about how to really set yourself up for success once you open your shop on Etsy. So I think, thank you, João, for that great introduction. I think there's so much about the way that consumers are shopping today that makes Etsy such a strong place to start your online journey. And I think one of the major things that we see with businesses who are looking to grow their business online is that, the time it takes to build your own website, drive traffic to that website through search engine optimization and digital advertising, it's not only time intensive, but it can be quite expensive and require a lot of expertise. And so I think one of the great things about starting on Etsy is that you have instantaneous access to millions of buyers, both in the US and around the world. And you're also part of a really trusted brand. So I think when someone comes to a website where they're not sure of who's behind it, this really helps to make that customer feel more confident that their purchase it's actually it's not a fraudulent thing. They're going to get their parcel. They know what to do if how to reach out for help if they're not sure where their parcel is. So I think that is really just a great foundation for getting started. I think the other thing is just the ease and simplicity of getting started quickly. So if you're going to start your Etsy shop, I honestly think that you can get started in about an hour. Not to say that it's not going to take a lot more time to really grow that online business for yourself, but the basics are like that. And it only takes a few euros to actually get your shop set up. So most of the fees incurred on Etsy don't happen until you make a sale. So it's also a really low risk way for you to get started and get your experience with online. The other thing that I can't understate enough is that Etsy has such a vibrant community of entrepreneurs. They really are the special sauce of Etsy. And I think that in so many other instances, you would see this as your competition, but we see time and time again, our sellers are willing to take time out of their busy day managing their business to take time to guide you through a question you might have, whether it's about how to find a certain thing within the Etsy platform, or whether it's about a question more broadly around building your brand and digital marketing for your business. And I think that it just gives you access to a much bigger group of minds than you might have if you started off on your own. We also make it really straightforward and safe to start selling online. So Through the Etsy payments platform, you are able to have your buyers pay in whatever way feels like comfortable or suitable to them, whether that's PayPal or Google Wallet or Apple Pay, and you get the money deposited into your bank account in your currency, regardless of how that buyer paid for the product and in what currency they paid. And so I think that really simplifies, especially for people who are looking to serve a global audience. It just makes everything easier. There's also seller protections based in, you don't want to have to be worrying about fraud. Let our team of fraud detection systems and payment specialists worry about that. I think it just gives you peace of mind, and hopefully there are no transaction disputes in your future, but if you are, you have a team to help you navigate that. And then I think maybe one of the most exciting things, I feel like payments and protections are important, but they're not really jazzy, but like we have a team of engineers and user experience experts who are constantly looking to make the experience better for both buyers and sellers. So they're thinking, how can I make sure this business owner who is managing a small business can spend the time on the stuff that really matters and is not spending time on the like small itty bitty things that can really rack up time. And also thinking, how do I make this experience great for buyers? And so they're thinking about things like, how can I make it easier for buyers to understand what this product really is and an experience where they can't touch and feel the product or hold it in their hand? How can I make sure that buyer feels confident? How do I localize that experience so that both a US buyer and a buyer in the UK can have an experience that's suitable to like their expectations in those countries? And then the other thing Etsy has is we have like a whole array of tools to make your business what you want it to be. So we know that everyone starts their journey in a different place and might have different goals and ambitions for their business. You might be someone who's looking to sell exclusively online. You might be looking to have a multi-channel business where you're selling offline, online, and different places online. Etsy has tools like Etsy ads and offsite ads to help make sure that you get found. You can turn on an Etsy ads campaign to make sure certain products are showing up at the top of search results for buyers. You can participate in our offsite ads program. I think what's really amazing about this is that Etsy is focused on small businesses. We know what your pain points and ambitions are. And so we created Etsy offsite ads, with the idea that you might not have digital advertising expertise. We let our team take care of that so we can advertise your products on places like Google, Facebook, and Instagram, and you only pay if you make the sale. So I think like this just gives, again, like that confidence and ease of mind to small businesses. And it's also optional, so you can opt into that if that suits your goals. We have a lot of other tools. I'm not going to touch on all of them, so I definitely encourage you to spend time on Etsy's site to explore more of these. But I think some of the main ones that come to mind is we have a Sell on Etsy apps. We know that you're busy, you're constantly on the go, at least in non-COVID times, maybe out of the house a lot. So we have an app on your phone where you can manage orders, edit listings, respond to buyers' questions and messages. We give you the ability to customize your shop so it really feels like your own brand, even if it's within Etsy's marketplace. We have integrations to connect to things like inventory management and other tools that you might need to make managing your business easier. And we provide you with things like shop stats so that you understand what's working for you on Etsy. So if you're going from an offline to online experience, you might not understand how buyers generally search, right? Like if you're in a shop, you kind of see an object, you gravitate towards it. That experience is a little bit different online, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn how to optimize for that. And Isabella will talk a lot more about that. Getting started is really simple and affordable. I just wanted to go through some of the fees because I'm sure that's something top of mind for you. I'm also going to admit that I have a small typo on this slide, so please forgive me for that. So the way that this works is every product that you want to sell, you're going to create a listing for. That listing is where you try and bridge that gap between the offline-online experience and explain what your product is. Every time you list an item, it's going to cost 20 US cents to list for each item. That is converted into your currency. So you'll always pay, if you're setting up your shop in euros, you'll pay in euros. Obviously, that will fluctuate a little bit in terms of exactly how many euro cents that is given the exchange rate, and that will happen at the time that you create the listing, not at the time you make the sale, like I said here. So we can correct that and share that with you afterwards. When you do make a sale on that item, you would then pay a 5% transaction fee, a 4% payment processing fee plus 30 euro cents. And then if you're opted into the Etsy offsite ads, and you made the sale because a buyer interacted with one of the ads for your products and then made the purchase, you would pay a 15% commission. So at the outset of creating a listing, it's just the 20 cents. When you make the sale, you have those transaction fees, and the offsite ads fees are only if you're opted into that program and only if the sale came through someone interacting with an ad for your product. I think as you think about getting started, it's really important to build your shop strategy and understand what your goals are. So to Joao's point about expectations in different markets, like know who your target audience is and what their norms are. So do they expect free shipping? What are their timing expectations? How do they like to understand things? So like if you're thinking about a US audience, maybe in your descriptions using both imperial and metric systems so they actually understand what size your item is. All of those things are really important. They can be small details that really make the difference between someone clicking on your item and then actually making that purchase. I would say the one thing we know about Etsy buyers is that they're really excited about the ability to purchase from sellers around the world to find those really unique, special things. And so while they are very used to the Amazon norms of free and fast shipping, they are willing to be patient as long as their expectations are managed. So I think the most important thing here is when you're setting up your shipping profiles for different markets, it's to take the time up front to understand your costs and the timelines that are reasonable and really make sure that you're guiding the buyer on that journey. So many of the time, buyers are looking, especially like with the recent pandemic, they might be looking for everyday essentials. They might be looking for gifts as they try and celebrate loved ones at a time when they can't be there together in person. But both of those things, everyone wants them to arrive on time. So just helping your buyer manage those expectations is super important. I think setting goals for your shop so you know what milestones you want to hit are a valuable way for you to guide your business. And then I think the other thing I'll just mention if you're thinking about setting up your shop in the next month or two is that I know it's just nearly July, but it's time to start thinking about Christmas. What are the products your buyers are going to want? What are their expectations at that time? It's never too soon to start getting ready, even if it feels a little bit silly to do that in the summer. And then the last two things I'll just say is, like I said, it's not very time consuming to get your shop started. I think it's really valuable to take a little bit of time up front and just gather everything together that you're going to need. So I would say for any of the products you want to put in your initial range, pull together the product titles, descriptions, pricing, anything that you might have from either pre-existing or that you have to put together for the first time. Pull together the photos that you have for your products, gather your banking information because you'll need that. And you also want to, if you are someone who designs a product but doesn't actually produce it, you work with a production partner, it's required that you indicate that on Etsy. So you also want to have those details ready so you can describe your production partner when you set up your shop. So those are all the kind of things to have maybe on a nice file on your computer. The other thing I'll mention is that while so much of Etsy is great to navigate as both a buyer and a seller on your mobile device, I would recommend if you have a laptop or desktop to use that to get your shop started. I think it's just a little bit simpler when you're managing so many different pieces of information. So like I said, an hour to get your shop opened. You start with creating an account on Etsy. You're going to give your shop a name, set your preferences. You must add at least one product to get your shop to the open state. I would say that in general, I would recommend starting with at least 15 to 20 products, but you know you best. So if you're one of those sprinters who wants to do it all at once, maybe carve out an afternoon, get the shop open and stock it with at least 20 products and follow Isabella's optimization guidance. If you're someone who's a bit more of a marathoner, do the hour to open, and then within the next few days, I would just recommend you get to that 20 listings. It gives buyers confidence that your shop is legitimate, and it also makes sure you're more likely to be seen across the different searches that our buyers are making. And the last thing I'll say is that Etsy is always evolving to meet the needs of our buyers and sellers, and we have a ton of great resources, both from the Etsy team itself and our amazing seller community. So I would recommend that as soon as you get started, you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, sign up for our newsletter. We have teams of sellers who self-organize in different communities. I know we have a team in Portugal, so really get involved and make sure you're constantly learning the latest tips and tricks. I will plug the fact that we have marketplace insight reports and great trend videos that help you navigate things like the changing buyer needs during something like COVID, as well as the changing season. So And with that, I'll pass it over to Isabella and look forward to your questions at the end.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for being here today, everyone. It is an honor and a pleasure to get to speak to a room full of creatives and entrepreneurs like yourself. My name is Isabella. I work at Etsy specializing in shop optimization. So my focus is really to help sellers grow. I help them learn how to get found. I help them learn how to market their business and how to use the tools available to make running their business a little bit more efficient. So I've been at Etsy for about 5 years now, but I've had an Etsy shop myself for 8. So you could say that I spend a lot of time on Etsy. I want to talk today about a few major steps you can take once you have an Etsy shop to make sure that you're set up for success. So when working with our seller community, we often suggest that sellers take a step back and approach this topic from the perspective of a buyer. Specifically, how do they find and perceive your shop when browsing online? So your main objective, obviously, is to grab buyers' attention and to encourage them to make a purchase. So putting yourself in your buyer's shoes when thinking about how to do this can be a really great way to look at your shop more objectively. So I think this information is going to be helpful for those in the room who are either just starting out or considering opening an Etsy shop, or maybe there's someone here who already has an Etsy shop and is looking to take it to the next level. So to start things off, I would love for everyone to just sort of take a minute to think about what it's like for you when you're shopping online. What influences your purchase behavior? Maybe there's something you need to see, some sort of incentive, something to influence that decision. According to our findings, there's actually a lot of different things that come into play here. So the most important aspects that we see are your product photography. Buyers are drawn towards attractive photos that showcase high quality products that are relevant to what it is they're looking for. Price and processing times can also be highly influential. So buyers value products that are affordable and accessible. And then reputation is a big deal as well. So buyers prefer to shop from shops that offer great customer service. So maybe there's shop reviews there displayed for them to look at and understand the quality of customer service that your shop is offering. Something else that comes into play here in terms of reputation is a clear and approachable brand. So based on that, we're going to focus on 3 key areas today. We're going to look at discovery, product photography, and branding. So when I say discovery, I mean how do shoppers find you? And then photography is basically how shoppers initially engage and perceive your items. And then branding can also influence how people perceive your shop and products. And essentially, it's what sets you apart from competition and makes your shop different, unique, and stand out. I do think it's worth mentioning that even the most successful sellers on Etsy tend to evolve and improve these areas over time. So I kind of like to look at it as how you would if you're looking at running a brick and mortar, an actual like in-person business. So in a brick and mortar, you're going to rearrange the shelves, you're going to add new inventory, you're going to update your Windows displays ever so often. So the same should be true with your online shop. So keep that in mind as we're going through some of this stuff, because you're never going to just set something up and then walk away and leave it forever. It's always necessary, especially in this ever-changing world that we're going through right now, to make updates just to keep things fresh, relevant, and competitive. So we will start with discovery here. What we see on Etsy is there's 2 main ways that buyers are finding items on Etsy. There's Etsy search and then there's Google search. And as I'm sure you all know, both platforms, buyers are just going to navigate there and then type in exactly what it is they're looking for, and they will be fed back search results related to those search queries. So both Etsy search and Google search have opportunities for getting found organically or through paid advertising. What that means is just somebody types in a search, and on Etsy, there will be Etsy ads. Michelle touched on that a little bit at the top of the page. And then same with Google. When you conduct a search on Google, you'll see Google product listing ads at the top. In terms of optimizing for regular search results and ads, there's a lot of overlapping optimization factors there. For the purpose of today, I'm just going to focus on organic visibility on Etsy.com. So how people find items when they type in a search on Etsy. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play here. And a quick note before I jump into them. The way Etsy determines visibility is always changing, but what we're going to discuss today are some of the current best practices that we recommend. As Michelle mentioned before, we're constantly publishing updates about product launches, tools, trends. So anytime there is a change, like, we'll definitely let you know. This is the current way that Etsy search works. So first I want to talk about titles and tags. As I'm sure many of you know, when it comes to online selling, search engine optimization is very important, otherwise known as SEO. So what that involves essentially is applying keywords or key phrases to your items so that they are discoverable. When a buyer conducts a search, they type in something that they're looking for. So red leather wallet. Our search algorithm searches all of our inventory and looks for matches in those keywords. So when I talk about titles and tags, when you're creating those listings that Michelle was talking about, you have a space for the title and you have space for tags. That listing title is where you can say exactly what it is the item that you're selling is. So rather than naming the product, for example, if you sell art and you have a name for the painting, this is not the area for that. That would be better suited in a product description. The titles, you want to say exactly what it is you're selling. So this is what is going to appear when somebody conducts a search, whether it's on a computer or a mobile application. They will see one image, a thumbnail photo with the title of what it is next to it. So we recommend you just be really specific here. So red leather wallet or floral blouse for women. You just want to be descriptive yet a little bit short, just so it's very easy for a buyer to read, understand what you're selling, and those keywords most likely match up to the search that was conducted by the buyer. Then for tags, these appear on the back end. So this is an area when you're filling out the listing where you can input 13 different terms. It's sort of like metadata on the back end, just to help our system better understand what it is you're selling. And again, when a buyer conducts a search, those keywords that you've applied to your listing are scanned for matches. It doesn't necessarily have to be an exact match for you to be eligible to appear in that search. However, if it is an exact match, you are most likely to rank higher in those search results. So it's really important to think like a buyer here. And then attributes and categories. This is another area where you can apply keywords to your listing on the back end. These are not free-form the way that titles and tags are. These are instead structured data points that Etsy provides you for you to select, saying, yes, this is my item. Yes, my item is good for this occasion. Yes, my item is this color. Attributes and categories on the back end, you fill them out. And then on the front end, buyer facing, what appears is search filters when a buyer conducts a search. So if you've applied these categories and attributes to your listing, and then a buyer filters down their search, if there's a match there, you have the opportunity to appear in those filtered searches. So keywords are super important here. That said, keywords are not the only thing that factor in where you appear in search, how you can be discovered in Etsy search. Another important metric is what we call listing quality. So to show items that we think buyers are most likely to purchase, the Etsy search algorithm considers how well an individual item tends to perform in a search. So what that means is when a buyer sees your item in search results, do they click on it? Do they favorite it once they're looking at it? Do they add it to their cart? Do they essentially end up purchasing it? All of those positive engagements that happen between your product and the buyer can contribute to your search ranking. So first things first, your keywords, they're what make you eligible to appear. And then it's your listing quality that really comes into play and determines how high you rank in those searches. So with that in mind, there's a lot of different things you can do on your end to sort of influence the purchase behavior, the purchase decision. Before I dig into those, I want to call out translations and language. I think that's really important for this group as well. When you set up your shop on Etsy, you choose your shop language. And then from there, the titles and tags, the keywords that we just talked about, that you add to your listings should be in that same language. So if you are selecting Portuguese as your language, but maybe you're trying to target US shoppers in the UK, you still wouldn't want to type out your keywords in English. You'd want to keep it in Portuguese. The Etsy system will translate all of that content that you input to the buyer's preferred language. So if you write everything out in Portuguese and I'm searching the site and I find your item, I'm still going to see it all in American English because I'm in the US and that's how I've selected to browse the site. Etsy will auto-translate everything. That being said, if you do speak multiple languages and you prefer to add your own translations, there is a space for that. You can opt into that. The translations that you add yourself do tend to be a higher quality, meaning they're a little more natural than machine learning, so potentially you could have a better match. However, we would only recommend this if you're actually fluent. Otherwise, the Etsy auto translations will do the job. So going back to that other metric that's a huge factor at play, listing quality, how well your item tends to perform in searches. These are two areas I want to talk about because they can influence what we essentially call your conversion rate. So the first one is product photography. I'm sure anyone who has sold online before knows that this is the make it or break it, right? Product photography is so, so important. For every listing you upload, you are allowed to add 10 photos. While the number of photos you add does not directly impact your listing placement in search, so it's not like our algorithm says, oh, they have 10 photos, they rank higher. But we have seen through research and analytics that listings with more photos tend to perform better than those that don't have a lot of photos. We've seen sellers throw up 1 or 2 images and call it a day. Then we have sellers who really take the time to show off every single product angle. They show how the product is intended to be used. If it's a piece of art, it's framed on a wall. If it's clothing, it's modeled on a person. If it's jewelry, you can see scale, dimensions. They use props to illustrate all of that. We'll talk more about shot styles in a minute, but I really want to call out how important product photography is, especially even if your keywords are great and they are super relevant to what a buyer is searching. If your photo doesn't grab the attention of that buyer and have them go through and look and fall in love with your product and want it, your item is not going to continue to rank high in search if it keeps getting overlooked. So photos are just so important. Something else that comes into play in terms of listing quality is the customer and marketplace experience that you as the business owner are able to provide. So when we think about having a great experience with an e-commerce brand, we think about great reviews. So sometimes if I add a product to my cart, but I'm not sure if I want to purchase it or not, I'm a little bit on the fence, I might go look at the shop's overall reviews. If I see somebody write like, I never got this, or I tried to contact the seller for help and they didn't help me, that's going to turn me off a little bit as a buyer. I may not want to make the purchase. However, if I read a review that says, oh, the seller was very communicative, oh, the seller sent this right away, great customer service, really thoughtfully packaged, love this item, looks great, all of that is really going to help influence me to make the purchase. So it's important that you treat every sale with a lot of care and thoughtfulness. Buyers are prompted by Etsy after they receive an item to leave a review, so you want to make sure you're getting those positive reviews. Other areas that can contribute to an overall marketplace experience are what we call the About section. Every shop has the opportunity to fill in a bio, share photos, share a little bit more about them as a maker or curator, whatever type of business you are. And this is really I feel like this really speaks to the Etsy brand. Etsy, of course, is the overall overarching brand here, but you each have your own ability to run a shop and really brand your shop and be that shop owner and be that business owner. And we believe that that's why so many buyers love coming to Etsy, is because they're buying from a real person and they're supporting a small business. So telling your story in that little bio section can really resonate with potential buyers and influence them to make a purchase as well. Other things to think about that I won't dig in too much because I know João and Michelle mentioned them are offering competitive shipping rates, especially if you're trying to appeal to the US market. That's definitely a trend right now. So free or fair shipping, a completed shop policies option is really impactful as well. So this is another area. It's actually right below the about section, that bio I was just talking about. Etsy provides space for you to fill out what we call your shop policies. So this is an area where you can talk about whether or not you accept returns. What happens if you receive an item that's defective? What happens if something is lost in the mail? You can fill out the policies there, and from there, you can always fall back on those. So if you have an issue or a dispute with a buyer, hopefully you don't, but it does happen sometimes, you can always point to your shop policies and just say, like, these are my policies. This is why I'm unable to accept this order back. Or you can even say, like, as you can see, I'm happy to accept the return, yada, yada. If for some reason it does lead to a larger dispute, Etsy will always have your back and support you as the seller going back to your shop policies. So it's really important to have those filled out. They can also just establish trust with potential buyers. I think if a buyer is browsing your shop and sees that you have no policies at all, they may be hesitant to actually make that purchase. So I know that was a lot. There's so many factors that come into play when it comes to visibility on Etsy. So I did want to just highlight some pro tips. I'll start with the keywords here. For your listing titles, use the exact words and phrases that you think a buyer is going to type into search when shopping for an item like yours. So again, try not to get too creative here, too abstract. When you're creating your listing, just ask yourself, what is this? And what would somebody who's shopping for this item type in? They should be informative, but also brief enough because that's good for conversions. Too many words or phrases shoved in the title can kind of look a little spammy, so just keep that in mind. It's sort of about finding the right balance. And then I always say put your most influential phrases at the front of the title. This is especially important when buyers are shopping on their mobile devices. They're only going to see like 3 or 4 words next to your listing image in search results. So make sure it's not too long to where it's cut off and it would be confusing. Just keep that in mind. And then tags. Tags are sort of where you can add metadata about your listing. So think about the finer details here. Styles, colors, textures, sizes, themes, motifs, stuff like that. And make sure you're being specific and using all 13 available to you. A really common mistake that we see some of the new sellers making is they only input a few keywords there and then they just sort of leave it. The more words and phrases that you have applied to your listing, the larger the pool of searches that you can appear in. So it's really important to take advantage of all of those slots. Of course, write in your shop language unless you're fluent in multiple languages and want to add your own translations. And then something else that I always advise, Michelle mentioned a lot of the seller tools before, but we do have a robust set of shop stats that are available to all of our sellers. So make sure you use those over time to measure your performance. So specific to keywords, what you can do is you can open up your shop stats and you can see what words and phrases are buyers typing into search where they're finding my items. And from there, you can see, oh, wow, this term, this phrase is working really well for me. I should keep using it. Maybe there's words and phrases that you have applied to your listings that aren't showing up in your shop stats. This could mean that it's time to switch them out for something different. So again, remember to always keep experimenting, evolving, and really rely on those seller tools like shop stats to know how you're doing. And then going back to some of those other areas, a few things to highlight for pro tips here. How to make your listings go from a view to a sale, and then how to create that overall really positive experience for customers. Use engaging and click-worthy photos. Write engaging and informative listing descriptions. So what you write in your listing description, which is displayed below your product photos on Etsy, it doesn't necessarily impact where you place in search, but a buyer will read that when they're looking at your listing, and if it reads well, if it resonates with them, they may be inclined to purchase. So think about your target market here. What information would they need to know to feel more comfortable purchasing your item? So think about sizes, dimensions. Maybe it's using both empirical and the metric system here if you're trying to appeal to US shoppers as well as more localized in Europe. And then also remember, offer great customer service. That will lead to positive reviews. That will lead to less disputes and cases over time. That will help your shop look really professional and credible as potential buyers are browsing it. So, and also complete your about section, that shop bio, and complete your shop policies. These are areas that can help establish yourself as a professional and credible brand, and also just build trust with potential buyers. So again, that was a lot, and we did talk about how important product photography was. So I want to give a little more insight into what good product photography looks like, things to think about as you're thinking about opening an online store, whether it's an Etsy shop or not. Product photography is so important, especially in this world where we can't necessarily pick up and touch and hold items in our hand. We really have to rely on product photos to understand what it is we may be purchasing. So a few things to recap on before digging into the shot styles. Once a buyer discovers your listing in search, your photos can communicate your brand, what the product is, and listing photos are a major influencer in purchase behavior. And positive purchase behavior means a more positive search ranking. So for a variety of reasons, it's important to have good photography. So what I'm going to go over here are the 7 essential product photos. These are images that we see some of the most experienced and successful sellers using. This is based on research that we've conducted. These are the types of photos not only that buyers like to see, but are starting to really expect to see. So I will review them all in a little bit more detail. The first one I want to talk about is what we call the studio shot. So basically, this is a photo of your product with a very plain background and getting plenty of light. Natural light is always the way to go if you can. Otherwise, a soft colored background like this should help balance any harsh lighting. So this is actually what I typically suggest for that first listing photo. It's really easy to communicate what the product is, and it looks really nice whether it's on Google or Etsy search. It's just clear, direct, and to the point. Typically, when shoppers browse thumbnail images in search results, they're drawn to really clear and bright photos like this that show off the product, that make them want to click on it and learn a little bit more. The next shot I want to talk about is the lifestyle shot. We have this very lovely woman in her swimsuit here. This is your product looking good in its natural habitat or its intended use. So this is kind of where we see a lot of sellers getting creative, showing off how their products might enrich someone's life or help solve a problem, if they're solution-oriented. But essentially, a lifestyle shot helps people imagine what the product would look like in their lives if they were to own it. So it can be a little bit aspirational. It creates an ideal scene. Maybe if you're selling a piece of art, you have it sort of on display with other art around it, sort of like a gallery wall. They're meant to be inspirational. And I think especially for clothing or accessories, it's really important to show off how something looks on because, again, we are in this new COVID world where we can't necessarily go to a store, try something on, pick it up, hold it, that sort of thing. The next shot that I want to talk about, similar to the lifestyle shot, is the scale shot. So the main objective for this shot is to communicate size or dimensions. So whether having a prop or a model involved, you really want your buyers to be able to understand dimensions here. Sometimes when we write out what the exact dimensions are in the listing description, it can still be hard for buyers to visualize exactly what that means. So try to photograph it next to something so buyers can better understand scale, and that will in turn help them feel more confident towards purchasing something. The next shot that I'll go over is the detail shot. So this is just your product up close. It's meant to highlight different features, different angles, possibly textures. If you sell vintage items, for example, which is really popular on Etsy, it can show if something's a little more worn or if it's in way better condition maybe. It's good to have that to, again, establish confidence with potential buyers. The next shot that I'm going to mention is the group shot, which is a little bit interesting and something I only learned about recently, but research shows there tends to be some power in numbers. A cluster of your products together, whether it's the exact same item or it's similar items that you offer to each other, can just resonate well with buyers. It can sometimes influence multi-order checkout. So maybe they buy more than one of your products. If they see, for example, let's say you sell bracelets and you sell them one at a time. If you have a photo where you've got someone wearing like 6 of your bracelets at once, and it's styled very nicely, that may influence multiple purchases. The last shot, or I'm sorry, not the last shot, the next shot that I'll talk about is the packaging shot. This is one of my favorites. Etsy sellers are so great about thoughtfully packaging their items, and it's also an area where a lot of our sellers take the opportunity to further showcase their brand. Photographing this and sticking it in your listing photos can let your customer know what they're going to receive and even create some excitement. I think something we're seeing a lot of, Michelle mentioned this, is people are buying gifts for loved ones right now because they can't be there in person with them. Celebrations just look a little bit differently. So we do see a lot of sellers offering thinking of you or care package type items right now, and showing off what the packaging is going to look like for that end receiver to get can be really influential and make you want to send a gift to someone. And then the last shot I'll talk about, this is another one that's kind of more specific to the Etsy marketplace, is the process shot. So again, we see a lot of buyers coming to Etsy to support makers and small businesses. So showing off in your photography that you are the maker or the curator, or that this is your small business. Maybe it's a studio shot or a photo of your warehouse. Something like that can be really influential and sort of promote that small business brand that you have. So that's it for photography. I know that was a lot. And I also know that we mentioned that you can have up to 10 photos, but we only went over 7. Feel free to take some of those shot styles and do a few different shots of those shot styles. Maybe it's 2 different packaging shots. Maybe it's 2 different studio shots, 2 different lifestyle shots showing, maybe it's a plus size model and a regular size model, or maybe it's somebody wearing something in their hair versus around their wrist. Really experiment and try different things with those shot styles, and you can easily get those 10 photo slots filled. The last topic I'm going to cover today is branding. So once a buyer discovers your item, be it great keywords or photos that grab them, they've clicked on your item, and now things beyond photos and customer service come into play to help sway a purchase. So we always say that a clear and approachable brand can really help shoppers feel excited about making a purchase from you. And keep in mind, a lot of shoppers come to Etsy looking to discover something really special. So be sure to play up what it is that makes your business different and unique, and that can be highly influential to buyers. So branding essentially brings the unique story of your business to life, and it helps you stand out in the crowd. A couple things to think about when you're branding your business. You'll want to start out by defining what your brand even is, and then you can sort of explore what your brand's aesthetic is. So this can be really helpful for those just starting out, but at the same time, I think these are questions and elements to be considered over time, especially if you're looking to grow your business. So when you're defining your brand, here are some questions that you can ask yourself. Why do you sell your items? What is important and consistent about your products? Which words would you use and which words would you want other people to use when describing your items and your brand? And who are your customers? Once you have answers to those questions, you can start to develop your aesthetic. So what story and style do you want your business to convey? What's your color palette? If you start thinking about logos and fonts, what makes your photos cohesive? What's sort of the trend within your business? And then once you land on those, you can start to implement different pieces of your brand throughout your Etsy shop. So a couple places on Etsy that I want to call out. These are really great areas for you to really bring your brand to life. So we have this area at the top of every Etsy shop, and we call it your shop banner. This is the most prominent graphic in your Etsy shop, and this is the first thing someone will see if they look at your shop. So let's say they conducted a search on Etsy, they find your item, they click on your item, they're going to go directly to a listing page, not your shop. Some buyers may be inclined to make a purchase right then and there. Others may want to know more about your shop first. They might want to explore a little bit more before they decide to spend their money. So what they'll do is they'll click on, at the top of the page, they can click to view your shop. So this will be the first thing they see is your shop banner. Right below your shop banner is your shop icon. As you can see in this image here, the shop icon essentially matches a little bit with the banner. She's really creating a nice cohesive brand. And then to the far right, you'll see the shop owner photo. We see some sellers use this area for a logo. Others use a photo avatar there. I prefer the photo avatar if you're comfortable. I just feel like it puts a human face to your brand and kind of goes with Etsy's brand, which is all about human connections and supporting, individual small businesses. And then a couple other areas where you can sort of have your brand trickle throughout your listing photos. So we talked about the importance of photos. What we didn't talk about, though, is the thumbnails of all of your listing photos, what they look like when a buyer comes to your shop. So this is what a shop looks like, essentially. This seller has all of her thumbnail photos next to each other, and you can see that there's consistency in her photography. It's great to have really great photos and just make your listing have really great photos, but it's also important that when you look at your shop overall, the listing photos are cohesive. They go together. They tell a story. They support your brand. So just make sure you're deliberate there and consistent. Another area where you can include branding is that about section. I've mentioned it like 10 times already, but I feel like it's really important for so many reasons. You can actually add photos and a video here. So you can use images and videos to further communicate what makes your shop unique, what your brand is, how your process is unique and different. And this area probably takes like 10 to 15 minutes to fill out. It's quick and it can help resonate with buyers. The next area that I want to talk about is social media. So if you are looking to promote your Etsy shop on social media, this is another great area for you to really highlight your brand. So again, similar to your Etsy shop, your photos should all sort of go together, have a cohesive look to them. This is a great way to attract people on social media and bring them back to your shop. If you have a clear and unique and approachable brand that resonates with potential buyers, they may be more inclined to check out your actual storefront after finding you on social media. And then I'm going to talk about packaging again for a quick second. Your packaging should really be cohesive with the rest of your brand. With your brand, you want it to be the same across the board, right? So from the moment that a buyer discovers your item to the moment that a buyer receives your item in the mail, you want your brand to be consistent throughout. And that packaging is your final way of getting your brand out there and hopefully resonating with the potential buyer enough that they want to make another purchase from your shop or leave a great review, or you can tell a friend about your shop. Create some word of mouth marketing. So yeah, I know that was a lot, but what we've done here is we've aggregated different resources that cover all of the topics that Michelle and I went over in way more depth. Really, on this slide, we want to illustrate how many different resources are available. This is just barely scratching the surface. Our Etsy Seller Handbook has really robust content on all different topics, whether it's product photography or how to brainstorm keywords or how to craft a really great about section bio, what to think about when creating your shop policies. We'll make sure to share these out with everybody as soon as possible so you can dig in even further. And then one last resource I want to point to is the Etsy Community Hub. So if you go to community.etsy.com, you'll find our public forums where admin like Michelle and I are in there answering questions, hosting Q&As. We also have experienced sellers in there giving great advice, sharing learnings. We also post a lot of our trend guides and seller handbook content as it's released. We share it in here to make sure everyone has quick access to it. So definitely check that out if you're interested. And that's it from me. Thank you all so much for listening. I know it was a lot of information, but we hope you're feeling a little more confident about potentially starting an Etsy shop.
Well, thank you very much, Isabella, and thank you very much, Michelle. It was really a lot of information to digest, so we are stunned by so many things we have to learn about Etsy. Well, I would start, but we have a lot of questions. We have only 15 minutes to 20 minutes, I would say. And I will start by broader questions. What kind of products have more selling potential on Etsy? I don't know if Isabella or Michelle, which of you wants to answer?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then Michelle, maybe you can add. Something we're seeing right now specifically is everyday essentials are doing really well right now. And then the home and living category tends to be performing really well. I think a lot of buyers are stuck at home right now, and they're trying to kind of step up their game at home because they're spending so much time there, whether it's purchasing art or everyday objects, just to like a vase or candles or something to really make their home a little more cozy and feel more like home. We're seeing a lot of those items perform really well right now. I will add, it sort of depends over time. Like seasonality definitely comes into play, especially as we approach the holidays and Christmas. We see buyer trends shift a little bit, but I would say for right now, home and living and everyday essentials are two of the top categories.
Yeah. Michelle?
I would say the other thing that sellers are always buying, and this kind of spans our categories, is that they're looking for something special and unique that they can't find at one of those mass marketer sites. So they want to find something to make grandma's day like just really perfect, or find something for their kid that isn't like the same as all their other friends have. So I think that definitely is something people are willing to kind of dig through the treasure chest of Etsy to find. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity kind of no matter what category your products fall within.
Yeah. Well, another broader question. What kind of approach do you recommend in terms of, well, I would say regional markets, a big one just for a small company? What kind of approach do you recommend? Starting by a big market like the US, or starting by, I don't know, a small market in Europe, or a couple of markets? What's your view on that?
The nice thing is you don't have to decide. I think it's important if you already have a place where you sell within Portugal and your main objective is to reach a US audience, and certainly craft the things that will make the difference for those buyers. But I think you will find customers from around the world are shopping on Etsy and will buy from you. So I wouldn't box yourself into one specific thing. I think there's just a couple instances, like if you're looking to reach the US, putting your measurements in a way that they understand, that's not going to prevent someone in Europe from buying your product. So I think there's a lot of win-wins that we find for sellers outside the US.
Yeah. Okay. Another broader question, but it's a key question. How much do you think is the minimum investment in digital marketing per year to be successful on Etsy? Wow.
I don't know that there's a one right answer. I think it depends so much on your business objectives, but I think the nice thing is you can get started and like just test it out. Decide how much you have within your business's budget to get started. I would say we tend to have lots of guidance. You could ask other sellers what they're experiencing, but like it's definitely something like Etsy. As a company, we're always testing and iterating, and we think that's probably an approach most businesses should take. So within your budget, just try it out and just think about how that impacts the cost of your item, and make sure that you're baking that into your pricing.
I'll just add to that. Social media is free. So if you're looking to dip your foot in digital marketing, but you're not ready to invest a lot of money in it, explore social media. A lot of our sellers, a lot of our sellers have had really great success there. And then if you are ready to start exploring more paid advertising options, Etsy ads, which Michelle mentioned earlier, you can start out with $1 a day for your budget. Of course, the more you put in, the more you get back. But if you're just looking to experiment, $1 a day.
Exactly about this session, social networking. I have a question. Which one do you consider the best to maximize your presence on Etsy?
I get asked this question all the time, and I never have a satisfying answer. I think it really just depends on what you're selling and who your target market is. So the best advice I can give is think about who it is you're trying to attract to your business, and then figure out where it is they hang out online. If you're looking for maybe like a younger crowd, I think Instagram, Pinterest, I think that those are really great platforms. I think we see a lot of people on Facebook as well, Twitter. But I think the younger crowd is more hanging out on Instagram and Pinterest, and then maybe our more seasoned folks are on Facebook and Twitter. That's my personal opinion, but yeah, you really test it out.
Michelle, want to add something about that? No, that's okay. Okay, let's go into some specifics. So we have a question concerning pharmaceutical products for dentistry. Okay, for teeth, lung ventilators, and other protection products for COVID-19. Would this product be a possibility of sale in Etsy? On Etsy, sorry.
So I think in terms of what's allowed to sell on Etsy, it's really handmade items or items designed by you that are, and like also vintage products. So I think there's much more detailed guidance on our website. I definitely recommend you check out our policies, because I think it will more specifically address those questions. When it comes to products that are related to keeping people safe during COVID-19, we also have a seller handbook article that clearly outlines what that is. I think the main thing here is that we are not a medical site, and so you can't make medical claims on your product. If you want to sell, for example, a fabric face covering because you know that that's what consumers are looking for today, that's fine, but you can't talk about COVID-19 in the listing. You can't mention any medical claims or like filter claims. So I think it's just finding that distinction between what is everyday versus what is medical.
Yeah. Well, the same person asks something about transportation and taxes. Well, this is really a broader question. How about problems of transportation companies like UPS, TNT, and extra EU and USA taxes? Do you have a view on this? This is a really problem, or it's not a problem at all?
I guess I'm not really sure what we think the problem is with taxes. Like, they exist. You have to pay the ones that are relevant to you, but I think just you need to know what is required where your place of business is. And I think the other thing in terms of like, if we think about carriers and delivery, I think there's plenty of options that you have today. I think the main thing is understanding what your buyer expectations are and being transparent. So you have the ability in your shipping profiles to offer standard and then expedited or more features. So if you wanted to let the buyer decide, you can offer a standard, slower delivery, and then have an option for an upgrade to something like FedEx or UPS if that is, for example, a carrier you're interested in. But it's really up to you. It's really your choice in terms of like how that works for your business, because there's obviously cost and time implications.
Yeah. Isabella, want to add something now? Yeah.
Just that I agree with Michelle, and if you do have questions specific to your region, consult a local professional.
Okay, perfect. Regarding transport and return policies, could you give us a kind of a best practice which you find relevant from your experience for European sellers, especially related with transport options and return policies?
So I think in terms of transport for European sellers, I think, to be honest, there's actually a lot of variation within European countries. I don't think it's actually consistent, one size fits all. I think, like, again, the main thing is managing buyer expectations. So you want to over deliver and under promise, if that makes sense. You don't want to say your product's going to arrive in 3 days and it takes 3 weeks. Like, that's going to be a really bad buyer experience. So I think it's just understanding what are the realities and making sure you set so within Etsy, you have an estimated delivery date option. That's really helpful for the buyer who has a certain date in mind. Like, I need this to get to mom by her birthday. The estimated delivery date says it reaches here by X date. That is a combination of your processing time, so how quickly you say you can get something made in the mail, and that might vary depending on whether a product is something that you've already made already or whether it's something you have to make once you receive the order, plus the estimated shipping time that you input into your shipping profile. So I think that's where the most important thing is. I think, like I mentioned, we have a lot of vibrant sellers in our community who are often willing to share their best practices, and I think that would be the best place for you to ask as someone who's looking to ship from Portugal to someplace outside of Portugal.
Well, still regarding logistics, are there any logistic partners for picking and distributing the products that work with you in US market?
So I think for sellers, the partnerships with carriers are often based on where the seller is based, not where the buyer is based, if that makes sense. So for example, in the UK, we have a partnership with Royal Mail for our UK-based sellers. I don't think there's a pre-existing partnership that's set in place. And so there's it's really up to you if you're sending from Portugal, which isn't to say that wouldn't change in the future. I just think that's what it is for right now.
Well, a question for you directly, Michelle. What are the main difficulties of selling online to the US market? This is a real broad question. The diversity from region to region and the different consumer profiles, for instance?
Well, that's a hard one to answer. I think this really comes down to you spending time on Etsy. So we have marketplace reports. You should do searches today for things that you might be interested in selling and see what that experience is like right now. I wouldn't worry so much about like where in particular you're selling. I think you're going to have a consumer base that, I mean, like everyone would do this, where you kind of understanding like what age might they be, what interest might they have, and that's going to drive a lot more. So I don't know if that's particularly helpful. I feel like you need to do your homework more than I can answer that question for you.
Okay. Thank you. There's a lot of work, homework to do. Well, a specific sector, furniture. So what's your view about this sector, specific sector, and what is the potential in Etsy?
We have a ton of furniture sellers on Etsy. I think kind of going back to what Michelle said, you just have to do your research and figure out what works best for you. But it can be done. We have lots of sellers who are shipping really large, fragile items across the world every day. I think you just have to do your research on packaging and shipping carriers, and then remember to try your best to work those shipping costs into your product cost if you can, just so that you're able to stay competitive and offer fair shipping.
Yeah.
I think for that one, it's really being in your buyer's shoes. What would the experience be like for you if you found an item that you fell in love with and then you got to check out and the shipping cost more than the item itself? Like, that's a terrible user experience. So like just thinking what that experience would be like if it's a larger price item, like what are your shop policies need to be to address what consumers' concern would be. Like the trust required for a $10 purchase is very different than a $100 purchase or a $500 purchase. So just keeping that in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so we changed subject radically, and we want to talk about food. With food products, how does it work with FDA and food regulations? Do you have any view on this?
So on Etsy, you have to be compliant with your local laws as well as to the consumers you're selling to. And so I think that food probably has more variability than a lot of other products, especially in the US. So I think, again, I hate to sound like the person who's just assigning homework, but like it's just going to require a little bit of research to see what's permissible where you're based.
Yeah.
It can be done though. Again, we
have sellers, yeah,
sellers who are selling food. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I also, sadly, I have a hard stop in 2 minutes, so I'm going to have to run after that.
Yeah. Okay. So one last question. Yeah. Okay. So what about customs? Do U.S. customs take time to clear the products? One question. If you have a perishable product that depends on temperature control, how to overcome it? Two questions in one.
So I'd say with customs, like the process is what the process is for shipping in and out of different countries. I would say like you always want to be thoughtful, again, when you're estimating delivery times to take that into account. And I would say you should also consider what that buyer experience is like. Different countries have different thresholds for where you must pay duties and import fees, and that again can cause a hiccup if the buyer isn't expecting that. So just being transparent about that in your shop policies is really important. As for refrigerated items, I don't have any particular guidance as well. I'm not sure if that's something you have more experience with.
Yeah, I think packaging is so important, and you just need to make informative decisions about where you're shipping to. If you know that your item may not make it to a certain place, once it does reach customs, maybe you don't ship there.
Okay. Well, we run over
where you ship. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, sellers have the opportunity to select where they want to ship to.
Okay. So thank you very much, Isabella and Michelle. We'll run out of times, really, because we had a lot of questions. Maybe there are more questions. I guess that each and one of those of our members of our audience can ask you directly questions, or to João directly. I don't know how you want to manage this kind of thing. Maybe, first of all, people should do their homework, as you said, and then ask a lot of questions. So thank you very much to both of you. We'll keep in touch. And João, I will change to Portuguese now. João, thank you. Obrigado também ao João. E normalmente também qualquer dúvida, qualquer questão, podem colocar diretamente também à delegação dos Estados Unidos. Não sei se queres acrescentar algum.
Sim, certamente. Portanto, podem-nos enviar as perguntas e se forem perguntas específicas, nós comunicamos com a Isabella e com a Michelle e colocamos essas perguntas.
Muito bem. Bom, resta-nos então agradecer a todos a atenção. Ficamos ao dispor para quaisquer questões e outras perguntas sobre o mercado dos Estados Unidos também. E fiquem atentos às próximas edições de webinars dedicados ou a mercados, ou a setores, ou à área do e-commerce. Muito obrigado.